Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Rock Consultant Weekly Webinar. And this is actually the last webinar for the year because one of the perks of being on a Wednesday, I guess maybe downside, is that this year both Christmas and New Year's are on Wednesdays, so we won't have the next 2 weeks. So welcome to the last one of the year. For those of you who are here for the first time, my name is Josh Gregory. I am the Vice President of Education here at Rock Consultant. If you're not familiar with us at all, our team ran hundreds of routes across the country in both P&D and Linehaul for FedEx. And today we're really here to help new buyers that are looking to get into the space for the first time to kind of go in eyes wide open, have their questions answered, and really understand what they're getting into for day one when they stand up. And for anyone who's currently in the space, who's currently a contractor, we're here so that you can listen to better ways of doing things or hear from other contractors and try to think through the ways to make your business more profitable. And in some ways, it's just a space for us to come together, connect, ask questions, and make sure that we're all working together to find ways to be successful in whatever environment, whatever sandbox we're playing in. For everyone who's here every week, welcome back. And again, whether you're brand new to this webinar or you watch every week live or on YouTube, we always want this to be a place where you can ask questions, and feel free to ask any question. Before I go too much farther, just a quick disclaimer that I have to read. So Route Consultant is not endorsed by and is not recommended by Federal Express Corporation, FedEx Ground, or Amazon. Route Consultant is not sponsored by, is not approved by, is not associated with, and has no connection whatsoever with Federal Express Corporation, FedEx Ground, or Amazon. Now, if you haven't been here before, if you're not familiar with the format of today, we're going to go through some content, some things that we want to update you on what's happening right now, and some things that can help you hopefully be better prepared for the future. And then I'll go over some new listings that have come out this week, and then we will be open for pure Q&A. So there is a Q&A button at the bottom of the window. If you have questions that you think of while I'm talking, feel free to type those in. They can be questions about what we're talking about today or about anything in the space, and we'll be here to answer it. And we'll try to answer as many as we can. If we run out of time, we run out of time, but we're going to try to answer whatever you guys have today. So for today, if you have been here or if you're currently a contractor, you're experiencing peak is still happening and still going strong, but in the next week or so, we'll finally start to see things hopefully slow down after Christmas. So in just a second, we'll give a little bit of an update on what peak has looked like so far if you aren't in the space and are kind of wondering what things are like. And then for our main topic today, we'll be finishing up a three-part series that we've done around ramping up your new hires to teach the right habits and to protect your business early on. We talked the last two sessions about the employee handbook and the ELDP program. So if you have questions on that, you can go back and watch those last two and kind of see what we talked about there. But today we're really going to dive into the onboarding process, all of the steps that you need, all the documents you need, and what you need to be thinking about. And so we have, of course, brought Alex Froome back on to talk through it all. So Alex, if you want to say hi, and then we'll go ahead and get started.
Hello, how's everyone doing?
Well, I'm doing well. I wish they could talk back, but
I'm doing well as well. I think if you go eyes wide open into peak, you will be kind of like me, smiling and jolly. And if you kind of go in unprepared, I feel for you. You're running around with like a chicken with their head cut off right now. So I will say that peak has been this peak has probably been the best peak I've actually had, surprisingly. But a lot of it's also that I've adapted to how peak operates now for FedEx. I've engaged and communicated with FedEx to the extent that I prepared myself and gave them and built relationships where they are utilizing me and I'm providing them with exactly the power that they want so I can get full operational efficiency. So just to give you an idea, I'm doing 34% more miles on a weekly basis than what my normal average run right now. That's just me, and I'm also wide aware that this is the last week for peak for me. Next week, so just to get the idea for line haul as opposed to P&D, peak is usually about a 3 or 4 week period. Sometimes it can be 5 weeks, but generally it's the period going into Thanksgiving and then It runs through December, and like generally the week before Christmas, it's over for us. And like next week, I will probably do maybe, well, I mean, I already know that I mean, because of when Christmas falls, and Christmas falls on a really terrible day this year. Um, that I will probably have a really bad week next week and a really bad week the week after. I'll probably do, I mean, my normal runway, just to give you an idea, is like 85,000 miles. I'm expecting about 60,000 miles. I already know that because of the way it works, and when the sorts are going to happen, that we're cutting a bunch of my team runs, or my teams are actually not going to go out at the start of the week. They're going to go out at the end of the week. Um, so because of that, it's fine. I mean, I mean, I have a policy of not running on Christmas or on Christmas Eve, or on New Year's Eve. I'll run on New Year's Day, but generally there's nothing to run on New Year's Day, so it doesn't matter. But at Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve are two of the most dangerous days of the year to be on the road. The only other day that's really bad is the 4th of July, the evening of the 4th of July. So, from a safety perspective, I don't dispatch my drivers on those evenings. And then for, I think my drivers appreciate it, and I've always communicate well in advance to FedEx that I just don't run on Christmas. So,
So in all the volume that's been kind of crazy this year, we talked about it last week about P&D with the buyers, but what do you think, has been, do you have any idea of what the cause of it is? Because I know FedEx didn't expect this amount, but I think it surprised many people, the amount of volume we've gotten.
so I think part of it is also the compressed period. So we lost 1 week of your general shipment dates. So because of how late Thanksgiving fell and the fact that, Black Friday and realistically Cyber Monday was already into December, you lost a full week. So even if you had the same exact volume year over year from last year to this year, you're operating with 20% less days. So that means the volumes on those days are just going to be greater. And then on top of that, I mean, we actually did have 2 or 3% volume increase. And so realistically, what you felt, at least as a line haul operator, on a daily basis, we felt 7 to 8% greater volume. And that led to, if you're running full efficiency and you've developed your relationships with FedEx, you're running, if you think about it, 7 to 8% per day more, and you're running 5, 6 days a week, then you're looking at your volumes being somewhere between 30 to 40% higher.
Yeah. Yeah.
And realistically, I probably could even have done more. I just didn't have the trucks. I mean, yesterday FedEx called me up and was like, "Hey, do you have any more trucks?" I'm like, "No, I mean, I don't. You have every single one of my trucks on the road."
Yeah.
So,
Well, sometimes that's the only answers. I've given you everything I have. We are well above what was even expected,
yeah.
and that's all I got. They can't be mad at me
So,
for doing everything and more, but yeah.
now, and I mean, how did I get to this point? Like, well, one of the things early on in August, I started talking to FedEx about what they expected for peak volume. And we started engaging and having these discussions about like how many tractors was I going to provide to them and what kind of assurances was I asking for them in return. So one of the things I wanted, if I'm going to add additional tractors and hire additional drivers, I wanted to ensure that there wasn't going to be any purchase in my lane. Purchase is another word for outside power. So when so there are two things to understand with purchase. One is that purchase occurs when FedEx can't get enough power or enough tractors from the contractor base. And then the other thing to understand is that when they put purchase in place, then that purchase has a priority over TSPs. It's really frustrating, and it's the one thing I really dislike about working with, or I get frustrated with FedEx. But understand when they put purchase in place, they're putting in a contract, and so they're paying that tractor and that driver whether they run or not. Whereas with us, if they're not running us, they don't have to pay us. Now, the reason why they put purchase in place is because they are questioning whether or not they're going to be able to get enough power, specific more than likely from you. So if they question if they're going to have enough power from you, then they don't, then they might put purchase in place, in order to make sure that a certain pack number of their packages get to a certain location on time. Now, I've over the last 6 years worked really hard with FedEx to make sure that they know that, hey, you come to me, I will put a tractor on the schedule and I will have a driver there and I don't take decline during peak. And so I had that relationship. So when FedEx came to me and they said, "Hey, how many more tractors can you get in the, you know, Timbuktu lane?" I said, "How many tractors do you want?" And they said, "We want six." And I'm like, "Well, I can't do six. I can give you three." And they're like, "Okay, you're done." I'm like, "Okay, we're sure you're not putting any purchase." No, we're not putting purchase. So I've ran those three tractors to Timbuktu for every single day. And they just notified me today that Sunday will be the last day that I'll be running those. And I was expecting that as
Yeah,
yeah. So
perfect. Yeah, I think it's always just peak is one of those things that's hard to conceptualize if you haven't been in it yet. And so, for those of you who may be watching either live or on YouTube later, if you're trying to think through what it'll look like for you, there are general answers we can give, but then a lot of times it's going to be specific to what you're running, what part of the country you're in, and we can talk through that if you have specific questions there. But I think
yeah.
it's that, Alex, is a really helpful understanding of what you've gone through in this season and how you prepared for
And
it.
then the other thing is just being flexible. Like I had a run going to, for example, I had a run from Memphis to Nowheresville, and Nowheresville didn't have enough freight. Okay. So I turned around and said, "Okay, you have this team now. What can you give me?" And they gave me someplace to go. So I kept running to someplace instead. And I was flexible. The miles were, maybe a little bit different, but I didn't care. This was just consistent work that I was getting this team that it was normally, on the unassigned run rotation. So I went from Nowheresville to somewhere. I'm getting this somewhere run on a daily basis, and we're going every single day. And actually, it ended up going 6 days a week. And so I'm actually picking up more miles because of it. And it's just having that relationship and having that dialogue and talking to them and working through the issues. Now, has it been all gravy and roses? No. I mean, FedExes sometimes get behind on the docks, or they miscommunicate. They think that they have lined up five tractors going from Memphis to California, and California says, "Oh, we're sending four tractors out." And, luck of the draw, it's me who
Yeah.
doesn't have somebody to meet with. And so I have to go to Tucson. And then, I was trying to convince Tucson to let me go to Albuquerque. And then from Albuquerque, I went to Dallas. And then from Dallas, I got back to Memphis. So it happens. You just have to work the system.
Yeah. And I think working that system is an art in and of itself sometimes. Perfect. So let's get to the main topic for today. So why don't you kind of talk through onboarding and why it matters?
Okay, so I am going to go back to my employee handbook. Okay, so remember, God, has it been 6 weeks when we started this already, or 4 weeks
Yeah.
ago? We started 4 weeks ago with my employee handbook. Okay, so in my employee handbook, it has a number of requirements that the drivers need to give us. Okay, so on the onboarding process, I have a sheet that my HR manager uses. Okay, it's really faint. Sorry, darker, but it has a bunch of information that I require. So, hey, we've talked to them. So, has my HR manager interviewed the driver? Has Alex interviewed the driver? Okay, so we've done both of those things. Or has my manager interviewed the driver if I'm not available? From there, have we submitted their candidate profile to First Advantage? Has First Advantage email the candidate? Has the candidate filled out the application? Has the candidate responded to to the drug screen? Has it, are we going through all these things? Have we done the driver background check? Has he passed the background check? So we use FADV, but we actually have a driver file that keeps track of all these things for us as we're going through. Okay. So once we get to that point, then we get to the dolly test. Okay. So once we get to the dolly test, then we're getting, the road test, and then we get to the administrative portion of my onboarding process. Okay. So these come back with, okay, have we collected the medical exam certificate? Have we collected their driver's license? Have we collected their social security number? Have we given them a W-4 to fill out, and have we collected that W-4 back? Have we onboarded them with ADP? So for me, I use ADP. If you use Paychex or Gusto or stuff like that, have you submitted that thing and have they collected all that information? Have you filled out and completed the I-9 and then from the I-9 collected that information back and then submitted it to FedEx to generate a badge? Has the driver then acknowledged the safety information guide? Um, and then you'll see some other things that I'm going to go through in a second. Have they filled out the job offer medical questionnaire? Have they acknowledged the employee expectations? Have they received and acknowledged their welcome email? Have they acknowledged that they've received the employee handbook? Have they been added to Omnitrax? Have they been added to Safety Forward? Um, have they started filling out the paperwork to qualify for the 401k and for the medical insurance? Okay. Um, and then this is a checklist that my managers use with the potential drivers. Okay. So, have they taken the driver into FedEx and has he completed his English proficiency test? Every single driver within FedEx has to pass an English proficiency test. Have they received their FedEx badge? Have they been trained on Omnitrax? Have they been assigned a truck? Have they been instructed on where Alpha Kilo parks their trucks and how we park our trucks and how we lock our trucks? Have they been given a tour of dispatch and the yard layout? Do they know where the inbound lot is? Do they know where the outbound lot is? Have they gone through Alpha Kilo doubles, assembly and disassembly training? Have they gone on a ride along with the manager? Has the manager gone on a ride along with them? So the first thing they do is they'll run their prospective route with the manager, where the manager will show them what they're doing. Then the next time the manager will jump in the truck and go out with them and watch them do everything that they just learned. And then have they been trained on how to use MTA? Okay, which is the mobile trip app. Then we have their Alpha Kilo medical questionnaire. Okay, this is important because if you have a workers' comp claim, you want to know, was this a pre-existing condition that they're trying to file a claim for or not? Okay, so we have a lot of legalese on this document. We've verified that it can be used in Kentucky, Tennessee, and Mississippi. So we asked them, like, have you ever had neck injury? Have you ever had a knee injury? Have you ever had back pain? Do you have any pre-existing surgery, medical questions? All those kind of things. And then we keep this on file. So, hey, if Josh Gregory comes up and says, hey, I was lifting the dolly yesterday and I threw out my back and I don't think I'm going to work for the next 6 months. And lo and behold, he's always had back pain. Then, maybe he's not going to get that workers' comp claim filed. And then these are recent. This is my daily expectations. So even though the duties and responsibilities are in the employee handbook, I printed this out from my employee handbook. A lot of my drivers will say, well, I didn't know I was required to do that. So now we make every single driver fill this out or sign this, acknowledge that they understand what their duties and responsibilities are, and then they get a copy, and then we get a copy. And so the duties and responsibilities. So this is for my company. I will be on the yard 30 minutes before dispatch, and it requires him to acknowledge and initial. I will dispatch on time when my load is ready and available. I will notify my manager prior to leaving the yard when or if my run is canceled. I will make my manager aware of any issues when dispatching or issues with the Linehaul office. I will call in advance if I cannot cover my run. I will notify my manager if I've waited longer than 30 minutes at a bump or at the yard to dispatch. In the event that I use a truck other than the one assigned to me, I will refuel the truck after completing my run. That's important. I will only fuel at the following locations. I will return the fuel card to the permit book when not in use. I will perform a pre-trip inspection of my set prior to leaving the yard. I will perform a post-trip inspection after my run. I will lock my vehicle when I'm done using it for the day. And then he signs it. My manager assigns me as a witness, and then we date it. So that's all the onboarding that we do. A lot of it's paperwork. A lot of it's, it's going through the training and making sure that they are aware of the training and the way we do business. But a lot of it is to make sure that, hey, these are our expectations. This is what we expect of you, and this is what, we expect you to do. And then making sure that they cannot come back and say, well, I didn't know that. Because that drives me bonkers when a driver will tell me like, well, I never got trained that. Well, you read this, right? Well, I didn't know I needed to read that. Well, then why did you sign it?
Yeah, it's
So,
inevitable.
yes.
So one of the things, this is a lot of documents and process and checklists. How do you track everything and stay on top of it?
So with checklists, so my
Yeah.
main, that's the biggest thing. So my HR manager has a checklist for everything that we do,
Okay.
um, and that's part of our job is making sure that all our drivers are doing it. Is a role that and understand that like I didn't start off as a contractor from day one saying that this is how we did things. This is trial and error, and realizing that I need to have, we've expanded what we did. Like the medical questionnaire came out in the last 18 months because I had a workers' comp claim. And lo and behold, I knew this guy had a football injury. I've seen the scar, but he's complaining about knee pain, and somehow I'm on the hook for that one. So, um, pre-existing conditions are important, and you want to be tracking that for your workers' comp. The other thing is just you know, whether or not the driver's coming brand new to me from outside, from Knight Swift or from JBL or whatever, or JB Hunt, or coming from another contractor, I want them to understand that this is Alpha Kilo and this is how we do things. We have a certain expectations of what we expect our drivers to do. We do our driver training the same way. We do our driver coaching the same way. Every Wednesday night, they are going to get an email from me talking about safety issues. They're going to get a weekly talk from their manager. So these are things that we just do, and we have checklists to make sure that we're doing all of these things on a regular basis. And then we have a process to do remedial training. And this way, so that like when I talk about working on my business or working in my business, these are the things that allow me to work on my business because I have these checklists, so I'm constantly thinking about, okay, how can I make my company better? How can I make my company safer? And how can I make my company more efficient? And so that's me working on my business. And these are the things that I'm doing. And I would say that for any entrepreneur, whether you're in trucking or you're, opening up a Dunkin' Donuts drive-through, you want to be working on your business and not working in your business. Because when you work in your business, you've just bought yourself a job and you lose the opportunity to grow and to expand and to be able to um, just to look at other areas and other things. I mean, so it's really, really important that you set processes and procedures in place to give you the freedom to work on your business, to make it safer, to run it more efficiently, and to grow and to find ways to maximize your revenue with FedEx.
Yeah. So it's all the HR manager. Does she use software, or is it mainly just she has?
Well, I mean, we have like these,
Yeah.
we have sheets that we then scan and put into the driver's file. I mean, she uses Excel as well.
Okay.
I mean, and most of this stuff is actually, I've printed it out from Excel. So that's what we do. So we have an Excel sheet that goes into every single driver's file. And then there's stuff that actually, after we do onboarding, then then we have to, you have a responsibility as an through the FMCSA and from the Department of Transportation and with FedEx to manage your driver files. So you need to keep records and you need to update your records on a regular basis. So a lot of that is done through First Advantage automatically, but you need to be on top of it. Like you need to review there's an annual requirement to pull an MVR. First Advantage just reviews that MVR, FedEx reviews that MVR, but realistically, that's your responsibility as the carrier to review that MVR. You need to make sure that you have an up-to-date medical certificate and that your medical certificate is tied to your driver's license. Drivers should do that on their own because they lose their license if they don't. But we remind our drivers 3 weeks in advance when your medical certificate is going to expire. We remind our drivers 3 weeks in advance when their driver's license is going to expire. I mean, we're kind of, you know, big brother, mommy, daddy, whatever you want to look at it for our drivers. But we're also trying to make sure that the last thing I want is to find out that a driver's been made inactive because we couldn't, we missed the fact that he didn't have a medical certificate.
Yeah, something simple that was easily fixable and preventable, and it was just a matter of not having the right process or checks to make sure that you noticed it.
Yeah, exactly.
So for you, what do you use as kind of the triggering event to start your onboarding process? What is a driver? What point do they get to before you start all this?
Once they get to the dolly test, and we're giving them a road test. So we don't communicate with the driver that they need to take the dolly test until they've gotten the background check done. We've done the driver history, and they've passed their drug, or haven't passed their drug test. We have actually, well, yeah, passed their drug test. So those are the three steps that we do. And then at that point, then we start owning that driver and we start building the file and start processing. So as my managers are giving that road test, that's where we start training them on how we do things at Alpha Kilo.
Okay, well, I've got a couple other questions that I'll come back to. I'll come back to it in the Q&A. But first, just Alex, really appreciate it. I know that it's a lot that when you're kind of thinking through it, one, like you said, it's not this isn't something you just came up with overnight. So in some ways it should feel intimidating because this is kind of years of trial and error, like you said, to find the right process and right documents to make sure you do this right. But two, if nothing else, hearing what are the steps you should be thinking about can help you to get on the right path. To just know that, there are contractors that don't do, a lot of these processes, and it's a bad thing. You're forgetting a lot of things that can protect you down the line, especially those things around driver expectations.
Well, I'm right now. I just actually got off the phone with FedEx and was talking to my senior manager about the fact that there are a number of contractors that are having issues with MV plus AI. And that's just like you're not having the right processes in place to be able to, one, monitor your lytic system or your ground cloud automotive, two, have remedial training in place, and then have effective coaching to make sure that your drivers understand the consequences and then move on. Like, I mean, like I was telling you the story, I had a safety violation that was serious enough that I suspended a driver in the middle of peak for 3 days. So he understood how serious his the safety violation was, and that it wasn't a joke. That, like, when I say that FedEx is going to monitor this and this has an impact on my business and it's going to have an impact on you. So we gave him a warning. We did remedial training. He continued to do it, so we suspended him.
Yeah. Yeah. And, we'll talk more about it in a little bit, but I think if nothing else, we just want everyone to kind of see the breadth of things that you can do. And also just hear again, like you're just saying, the seriousness of this process. It can feel annoying, but you're going to be really happy you did it when something happens down the line that because you followed the right steps at the beginning, you're saving yourself time and often a lot of money and potentially even your contract. So,
Yeah, definitely.
I'm going to go through the new listings for the week. While I'm talking, this is a great opportunity. If you have questions, to go ahead and type them in. I see a couple already that we'll get to in just a second, but this is a good chance while I'm talking to type. So we have 4 new listings this week. The first 3 are P&D. So we've got 15 P&D routes at $1 million out of Ohio. So this one has 17 employees, 16 trucks, and a manager. Really low mileage operation, really low, really profitable and dense. So if you're looking in Ohio, that could be the right one for you. Next one's out of North Carolina. It's 18 P&D routes at 600,000. This is 19 employees, 16 trucks, and a manager. This is a more rural territory, but you've got kind of the right management structure and a good truck situation with some truck debt as well as another financing option. The third one's out of Maryland. This is 22 P&D routes at 1.3 million. 27 employees, 28 trucks, and 2 managers, so a little bit larger, and it's a dense, low mileage operation out of Maryland. So those 3 P&Ds are in Maryland, North Carolina, and Ohio. If you have questions on that, reach out to our team. We can send you the details. The fourth listing is actually bread. We haven't talked about one of these in a while. We do have about 100 listings or more in the bread space, in particular with flours. If you're interested, we just wanted to remind people again of these opportunities. This is out of Missouri. This is 4 bread routes at 262,000. So these are lower price point operations, but just this alone shows you that it breaks kind of the misnomer that a lot of people think you can only own 1 bread route. So this one's 4 routes at 262,000. So those are the new listings this week. So we'll get to the Q&A. The first Q&A actually relates to events for next year. So we do have our calendar starting to come out of our events that we have planned for next year. And the first question here was, what is the Linehaul Roadshow about? What does that mean? What does it matter? And actually, in the chat, you'll see we have our a link to the list of our events for this year. So first, our big event that we always do is our expo, and that's kind of our large unifying event where everyone, all of the different industries that we work with, we bring everybody together. We bring together content, vendors, food, drink, entertainment in one place for everyone. And there is line haul content there. There's FedEx content there. But the whole event is not dedicated to one specific space. So the really neat thing is always you get to interact with people from different industries, see vendors you might not have thought of, kind of expand your mind, and also interact with people in the line haul space. But we try to have more isolated and focused events at other points in the year. So we are having a roadshow specifically focused on line haul. I'd have to look at the calendar to see the exact date, and I don't want to say it wrong, but early next year. And the idea, March, I think it is March. I just don't know the exact date. But the idea, oh, you've got it. Oh yeah, Alex will be there. And the idea of it is that it is focused exclusively on line haul. So vendors are there for line haul, contractors are there for line haul. All of the content will only be about line haul, and it's attacking and thinking through specific problems in the industry, ways to improve line haul only. Everyone you see there will be line haul. And I see your question is it relevant to a prospective contractor? It is. These are focused largely on contractors. We want this to be a place for current contractors to come together, learn, see these sessions, learn how to operate more efficiently, see what's coming, and prepare for it. But if you're, a contractor, if you're trying to get into this space, you're obviously going to learn a lot by seeing what contractors are doing today and how you can start to plan that now and build it into your business plan. So there is value, and I would say you'll hear from people like Alex there. I'll be there too, and there'll be plenty to talk about and do, but it is a whole day just for line haul as you're trying to conceptualize what these events are. The next question, Alex, might be a short one, depending on how long you decide to answer it, or it could be an entire session. But during your line haul journey with FedEx, what are a few things that you wish you knew back then that you apply now in your day-to-day that have a big impact?
I mean, there's a number of different things. One is to learn. I wish I knew from the get-go that I suck at recruiting and that I should have outsourced it from the get-go. I tried to do recruiting. I might have killed myself. I might have annoyed the crap out of my wife. I mean, I started off with 4 trucks and quickly grew. I think FedEx, I mean, I wasn't even knowing, I didn't even know what I was doing. And FedEx gave me 3 additional unassigned runs all of a sudden. And I had to, it was just mind-boggling. So I was stuckling recruiting and didn't know what I was doing. And, I think I spent 6 months just on the phone constantly trying to recruit drivers, and I suck at it. And then, at the point in time I got introduced, I don't even know how I met Tony, but she had just started up Bright Flag Recruiting. And at the time, got involved with her, and she helped me got me across the finish line for that first year. And then I had an opportunity where after about a year, gosh, she's got to be with me now, I think for 3 years. So maybe 2 years in, or probably, yeah, because I think she's been over, no, she's probably pushing 4 years. 2 years in, there was a senior admin at FedEx who had been part of the FADV implementation team, who was trying to figure out a way at FedEx to do remote work. And FedEx didn't want to give her an opportunity. This was before COVID. And so I said, well, why don't you come work for me? You can work from home. And she's like, really? You do that? I'm like, yeah. So that's the other thing is so that's one is, understand what you're good at. And I suck at recruiting and what you're bad at. So I suck at recruiting. I was really good at finance. So for a long time, I did all my own finance. I did all the bookkeeping. I did all the payroll. And then eventually, as my business grew and I wanted to work more on that's the other thing, learning to work on my business instead of working in my business. And so I stepped, I made the investment to train somebody up on how to do something. and let them her or him run with it, and then allowed me to it gave me more free time to be able to work on my business and think about my business and grow my business. And so those are all the things that I focused on. So that's those, working on those and understanding like what your weaknesses are. And then the other thing is just build those relationships. Like I don't go to the terminal on a daily basis. I don't go to the terminal on a weekly basis. I go on a quarterly basis, but all my senior managers know who I am. All the senior admins know who I am. All the planners know who I am, and all the dispatchers know who I am. And I make sure to build those relationships because you know what? There's a lot of talent at FedEx, and I won't be shy to say that, sometimes, it's great having them come work for you. And so I've been successful with, hiring a senior admin, and I've seen other contractors do the same thing. Um, what else did I wish I knew? Um, I think just, you know, I mean, the biggest thing is just having those conversations and you know what? Realizing that other contractors are not your enemy, they're not your competitors. They're people that you can build relationships with and learn from. So I've spent a lot of time learning from other contractors, learning best practices. I mean, I'll be honest, like this medical questionnaire, this isn't mine. I mean, somebody else showed me this and I was like, "Oh, can I make one like that?" And so my HR manager and I talked to our attorney and and our insurance company and our workers' comp provider and crafted this thing that works. Actually, not our attorney, it was the workers' comp attorney and the workers' comp provider who helped us draft that. But that was, I mean, I literally said, how do you do that? And they're like, well, I just use my workers' comp to do it. And I'm like, oh, this is amazing. I got to go do this. Um, so, I mean, that's a big thing. And then I really wish there was no consultants. There was no like anybody that you could, I mean, there was no user manual. So I wish there was a user manual. And I think what we've done at Route Consultants with the classes that we have provided for free now on the website about like what is Linehaul is really powerful because it gives you a really good grasp of like, are you a P&D guy? Or are you a Linehaul guy? Are you a trash guy? Are you a bread thing route guy? Or are you an EMT guy? And I'm clearly a line haul guy, and I love being a line haul guy.
Yeah, and I think one of the big things I want to come back to that you mentioned is talking about knowing what you're skilled at and not being afraid to ask for help, whether it's from a vendor or another contractor, to get past the things that you're not good at. I mean, I think what I see a lot of the time is people come into this space and you are successful and you grow and you think that I did this, so if I want to keep growing, I just have to do more. And it's impossible to do everything forever. And you're gonna hit a wall at some point where you finally realize that sometimes to do more, you do less. Like you actually pull yourself out of some of the minutia, and maybe it's a manager, or maybe it's an admin you bring in, or maybe it's the right vendor you partner with, that they are good at doing what they are good at, and it allows you to think about the business, like you've said multiple times, work on the business instead of in it, and focus on the things where you can optimize and where your skill sets really bring the most value, because your time as an owner is valuable, and it's about making sure that you're spending it in the most optimal ways for your business.
Yeah, I mean, I think the best way to think about it, and it took me a couple of years to realize this and put it to work. My wife kept beating me about the head about it. You have to think about how valuable is your time? Okay. And you have to look at it this, I mean, first of all, you have to divide it up and like, do you enjoy doing this? And so you want to do it because you enjoy it, or are you doing this because you have to? And then is it more worthwhile for you to hire somebody else to do it? So it frees you up to do something else. So, for example, I like to do woodworking. Am I good at it? No. But could I have hired somebody to build shelving and build um, um, benches in my garage? Yeah, I could have, but I enjoy doing that, so I did it. And it's taken me a long process, and my benches have gotten better over. I've built five of them now, so they've gotten better.
Yeah.
But, And are these probably the most expensive benches when you think about it? Yes, they are the most expensive benches because realistically, I value my time at $250 an hour. Okay. When I think about my business and when I'm working in my business, in my back of my mind is that should I be doing this or should I be outsourcing this? Because my time and my thinking in trying to grow my business and how do I make my business, like we said earlier, more efficient, greater revenue, and more safe, those things to me, that's what I should be focusing on. That costs me $250 an hour. That's what I charge myself.
Yeah.
Well, that's how I think about it. Now, like those, I think the first time I built a bench, it took me like 3 days. And, I was really struggling. I kept looking at the YouTube video. So let me tell you, that first bench is it's like worth its weight in gold, honestly.
$1,000.
But
Yeah.
that's how you have to think about like, do you like doing payroll? If you don't like doing payroll, then you know what? Trust me, there's DMG Go, there is Pay Velocity, there is somebody out there. There's a guy, I think, who puts you in touch with a group of women who work in the Philippines and they can do your payroll for like 14 bucks an hour. I mean, there are plenty of options out there to do payroll cheaper. I mean, Josh probably has a ton of vendors on the Route Consultant's website that they can put you in the direction of and say, hey, this is how you do payroll. Or you could do what I did. I hired somebody to do payroll for me, So, you don't have to do that. If you suck at recruiting, you can go to Bright Flag, you can go to, you know, somebody else and get them to do it. Or you can do what I did and I hired an HR manager and she handles all my recruiting for me. So, I mean, figure out what you like to do, value your time correctly, and then say, okay, all those other things somebody else should be doing for me. That's the biggest thing I didn't learn and took me a long time to learn.
Yeah.
And I wish I knew when I first got into the business.
Yeah. And realistically, those are the steps, you can get to a pretty good sized business, but you will not grow beyond that if you don't make the right decisions here about how you build your business.
I think about seven runs is about the max you can do before you start getting overwhelmed, like where you really need a manager in place.
Yeah.
And I couldn't grow to 30 trucks and 30 or 36 trucks and 30 managers without having that infrastructure in place.
Yeah. Okay, so next question here. Do you think the merger of Express and Ground, when you're thinking about it specifically for Linehaul, do you expect any challenges or do you expect any big changes to come with that integration?
I mean, I do expect big changes to come. I mean, I think there's going to be a lot more opportunities to run freight from the air ramp terminals, the international freight that needs to go to a location. So if you think about it, the big international air hubs are, two of the biggest ones are Memphis and Indianapolis. There are others, I think there's seven or maybe 13, I don't know. But you see it all the time. All these planes coming in with hot freight or even cold freight coming in by air into Memphis and Indianapolis. There are opportunities then instead of that having to get, in the express network, it used to go from one airplane to another airplane, and that airplane would then fly to Houston or fly to Dulles or fly to Chicago or fly to wherever. Well, that's kind of inefficient, right? Houston is 550 miles from Memphis. Wouldn't it be easier if I just put that freight onto a truck and drove it down to Memphis or drove it down to Houston? It's going to get there in 11 hours. So there's going to be opportunities for international freight coming into the air hubs and then getting put onto a ground tractor and then moved to a final destination. It won't happen so much on the, west of the Mississippi because the distances are so great. But like I can get to Houston, I can get to Chicago, I can get to Dallas, I can get to Dulles in an overnight. So there's going to be opportunities there. Um, so I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities. The biggest challenge is going to be getting your drivers to be TSA certified and to be hazmat certified. And so for you to run freight from the airports, you have to have your drivers get their hazmat certification, and that's not an easy test to take. Um, and it's a little bit onerous with the background check that you need to do to hold it.
Okay. Do you know how long that takes at all?
I mean, the
Process to get certified?
I mean, to get certified, you could do it as quickly as in 30 days. Generally takes, I mean, the driver has to pass a really tough test. I mean, the hazmat test is no joke. It's about, I think it costs like 200 to 300 bucks. So I cover the cost for my drivers, and then I incentivize them once they get their hazmat certification. I pay them $100 bonus, and then I give them an annual bonus of another $100 on the renewal of their hazmat.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a good call.
And I just implemented that like recently.
Yeah, yeah, to prepare. Yeah, and I think this is one of those things where most of the logistical complexity is going to be on the P&D side, but I think Alex is a good call out there that there is going to be some freight opportunity as Express needs to be transported and as FedEx looks for added efficiencies. So it should be upside without too much complexity on the line haul side, outside of making sure your drivers are certified and able to pick up that freight.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, I do believe that that is the last question, and nobody's. I'm going to ramble for about 10 seconds, so that is your timer to type in a question if you want to. But in the meantime, Alex, thank you so much for being here and kind of providing not just your knowledge, but your documents and your advice as people are thinking about how to run properly now and in the future as they get into the space for the first time.
Definitely. It's my pleasure. I mean, look, I mean, you know, there are a lot of resources out there. I've populated and given a lot of resources to Josh. Josh and I have worked on a lot of different videos. Feel free to reach out to Josh and the team. They can get you access to a lot of the stuff that I've talked about or get you started and building your own culture. But I mean, you want to have it as your own. You don't want to be a cookie cutter of Alpha Kilo. You want to be, you know, you want to be Juliet Golf, you want to be that company, not Alpha Kilo.
Yeah, and I'll tell you too, if you're already in the space or as you get into this space, there are ways that you can work directly with us and Alex on an ongoing basis to have kind of both an ongoing playbook, but also advice and mentoring from Alex. So as you're into the space, we have that masterclass program. You can reach out to us. We can answer any of those questions there. And in the meantime, we've got webinars and content coming. There is a last question that came in, Alex. It snuck in, but I think I'll make you answer it.
Okay, so I'm ex-military. I don't know if you can actually see, but I went to West Point. So the phonetic alphabet for A is Alpha, and for K, which is Karen is my wife's name, is Kilo. So the company is Alpha Kilo Logistics. My kids have been bugging me to name the next company like Juliet Squared. Even though my daughter's name is actually Juliet, but J, the phonetic alphabet is Juliet. So I happen to have two J's, a G, and an E. I have four kids in my family, so. Um, yeah, I don't know if I'm going to ever have a follow-on company, but if I do, I have to come up with a new. Maybe I'll do like Oscar Mike or Charlie Mike.
Yeah,
So, but
yeah. I'd say a lot of people name their companies after themselves, but Alpha Kilo is a really nice one. A lot of people, it's like Alex Logistics. I
yeah.
like Alpha Kilo more. So yeah.
So,
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you again, Alex, and thank you everyone who's been on both live and watching on YouTube. As I said at the beginning, this is the last one for 2024. So we will see you all in the new year in 2025.
yeah. Happy New Year's, Merry Christmas, everybody.